the Solo Coach Podcast.
Good afternoon, Jamie. Welcome to the Solo Coach Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great to be here. So today, to introduce you, you are Jamie, the Solo Travel Aficionado.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take the title.
So for anyone listening, and for everyone listening, I should say, I met Jamie in 2023 in Ipoh, which is on the west coast of Malaysia. We quickly made friends there and decided to travel together to the island of Penang, which is a bit further over, where we spent roughly a couple of weeks together. So Jamie is fascinating as he's been traveling solo for 3.5 years, which I've done some maths and calculated is 42 months or 182 weeks on the road. So going
I
solo.
I have not done those calculations.
Oh, I
Thank
have.
you.
No problem, you're welcome. And in that time, he's met and traveled with over 1,000 people. In the process, he's had some phenomenal conversations, one of which we're about to have. So to Jamie, to kick us off, can you tell us, where have you been for the last 3.5 years?
Good question. Quite a few places.
Just a bit.
Latin America, North America, Africa, Southeast Asia, West Asia, and Australia, and now in Europe. You know, been 5 out of 6 continents. Not quite made it to Antarctica yet, but been around.
Wow. And did you ever imagine traveling for this amount of time?
In my head, when I started, I was like, okay, we're just going to travel for however long. Did not think I'd be 3.5 years down the line and like, okay, we're still going. So, yes, I guess in the back of my mind, it was like a fantasy. But I didn't think it would actually be real. So, yeah, 3.5 years down and still going. 5 years would be nice at some point.
And how does that 3.5 years feel as like a period of time? So 3.5 years, like when we were at school, was going from what, year 8 to year 11. And does it feel like it's been a lot longer, like it's been decades, or has it gone really, really quickly?
Uh, yeah, it's kind of bizarre. It feels is as though it was only yesterday, but then when I think about it, I barely can even remember 3.5 years ago. So it feels like it's been 10, 15 years that I've been traveling, and every year seems to feel longer and longer, even though it goes so quick. When I actually stop to look at it and think about it, it's like, holy damn, that seems so long ago. So yeah, I guess, yeah, it feels a lifetime ago. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. It's just so long ago. So long, which is good. That's good.
And when you set out, did you have like certain goals, certain things you wanted to achieve, or questions you wanted to answer?
Um, to see as much of the world as possible. Um, Questions I wanted to find, the classic traveler question of who am I guess, and who do I want to be were certainly in there. And questions that I want to ask. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've got to think back now to like feeling of 10 years ago. Um, I don't know. Did you have questions that you wanted to answer when you started traveling? Because you've been twice now.
Yeah, and thanks for asking. I think it was about trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, and also I wanted to take different countries for a test drive, like go and see what it was like to live or at least settle for a while in a different country and just see how that felt, test the waters. And then I guess I hoped from the process that I'd find some clarity and have like a clear direction for my life, or at least be a little further forward, because I'd found out what I didn't want and what didn't work for me, but I didn't really know what I did want and what did work for me. So I guess I went on the search for answers to life's greatest questions.
I guess it's similar as well. I'd only lived out of the UK once for 3 months in Rwanda. That was my testing of the waters of traveling. And I guess, yeah, going to experience different cultures, different ways of life, and seeing what's out there, and spending 2 to 3 months in the same city or 3 months in the same country, and getting a feel for whether I liked it or not, and if it is somewhere that I wanted to live, wanted to be. Haven't found I found places that I love and I really want to stay, go visit. I have not found one that I really want to live in yet, minus possibly Berlin. But that's not really that far away from England, I'm not gonna lie. I could have been like, yeah, Australia, or the other side of the world. Just three countries next door. So yeah, I guess that answers my whole questions.
So you haven't found. I was curious there. You said I haven't found one I want to live in yet. Are you still on the lookout?
Yeah, I always say I'm after a couple of things, either somewhere that I want to live, something that I want to do, or I meet somebody. So one of those three, not found those yet. Still, 3.5 years in, still searching. So yes, I think, yeah, Berlin is probably the closest I've come. I mean, Mexico, I spent 9 months in Mexico. Would not want to live there full time, but it was nice on and off in Mexico. So I guess that's the closest I've been to living in another country, like for long term. And you, where's yours that you would? I mean, you're back in sunny England now.
I certainly am back in Leeds. It took me a year, what they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. It took me a year of travel to realize that for me, Leeds is the center of the world. There's a great deal of
Questionable,
things that are here.
questionable.
Questionable. It's only got a little airport, I'll give it that, but it's got everything else going for it. Um, and there's some great other cities surrounding Leeds for anyone who's from North England that's very proud of where they're from, who's listening. But yeah, for me, I think of all places I travelled to, New Zealand would be my number two, would be somewhere I'd be interested in living. Loved the culture there, the people, the vibe. It was a bit like going back in time, 20 or 30 years from the UK. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm sort of a bit of an old soul, or 20 years. I was born 20 years too late.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's probably one of the reasons why New Zealand appeals to me. Um,
So
but
basically, you're just advertising New Zealand. If you want to go time travel, just go to New Zealand. Just go to New Zealand. I have that one place I haven't been yet. I've been Australia, but not New Zealand. You keep pushing me into telling me keep to go to New Zealand. It's on the list. It's on the list. If I go time traveling for 20 years, I
yeah,
might
I
go
think
there.
there's pros and cons for living absolutely everywhere. Nowhere is perfect. I suspected that, but then going traveling, I realized that really nowhere is perfect. You kind of got to choose what you want, but you've got to go somewhere that feels right for you. And when you know, you know.
Oh, did
Um,
it surprise you that after traveling for a year that actually you wanted to live back in England? Did that surprise you?
It did and it didn't. I mean, my partner was still here. She waited for me while I travelled for a year. She came out 3 times to visit me. So obviously, coming back to be with her was a big part of my decision. But also, um, I think being with missing my friends and family and missing the stability of relationships where you live near enough to someone that you can see them regularly. So we had a great chat about this the other day, Jamie, about the fact that on the road you make great relationships, you meet people and you think we've got so much in common, you have an amazing 2 days or 2 weeks together, and then you go your separate ways, and they might come from a different country, other side of the world, different continent, and staying in touch and staying friends can be very nearly or indeed completely impossible unless you
Mm.
put loads of effort in. And coming home and being around people who are friends for many years and are just up the road, and having my family within an hour's drive is really advantageous. It's not the be all and end all, but travel is still a big part of my life. But it's great to have that base with the relationships that I can continue to build and work upon. And these people are just up the road.
Well, I'd say traveling for so long now that this is one of the big things I've come to realize is traveling is incredible, and you meet, like you say, amazing people. You have incredible conversations. You get to experience, hiking volcanoes and traveling to all these different cultures, but you really do miss the stability of having one space where you can stay, you have your routines in, you have your regular people, that, if I don't see this person tomorrow, that's fine, because I'm going to see them next week. I'm going to go for dinner in 2 weeks, rather than like, okay, well, I guess I'll never see that person again in my life. So I guess I should go for lunch with them, or, having these routines, and it's not constantly bam, 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 bam. You're not moving, pack, pack, move, move. And it is, yeah, it is one of the downsides to long-term travel, I think. So I can see why. I mean, I'm not at the point yet where I'm like, okay, I'm packing my bags, I'm moving back to England. That's quite a way away, and I'm not sure if that will ever happen. But it's certainly liking the idea of settling more and more and staying somewhere for 3 to 6 months, getting to know people, having a base, getting routines going, some stability. So yeah, I think that's definitely a downside to longer term traveling. It's just taken me 3 years it took me to realize that. Hopefully, anybody else, if you want, learn it sooner if you go traveling. Every year, maybe stop and just stay somewhere for 3 months and do it nice and slow. Because I meet some people and I met this one person, they had an itinerary. She was traveling for, I think, 5 months, and she had an itinerary for every day and every hour of every day. She said it took her 6 months to build this itinerary. I can't speak to build this list. And like 10 a.m. Taxi to the shopping mall, 1 hour in the shopping mall, then 15 minutes drive here. And I was like, wow, I got up and I was like, I'm sorry, I have to go. I think I left it to my friend to keep talking. I was like, this is stressing me out. But there's different extremes, right? There's some bam, 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 as much as possible. And she was trying to get in, I think, like 12 countries. I think she tried like 12 countries in 1 month. And I was like, there's too much. But then, so yeah, I think I definitely find the slower travel to get that little bit more stability is a lot nicer.
It's more of an art than a science, isn't it? Like no one size fits all. Some people want all of the rigidity, a very, very clear plan that's really structured. And some people literally want to just arrive in a country and then see what it's like, and just a day at a time. So I can see that there's benefits and drawbacks to both, because if you go somewhere really busy, like I have in the past, you can end up that you're priced out of all the hostels, all the good beds have gone. You can barely even get around the country because all the train tickets have sold up,
Yeah.
and you find yourself in the middle of chaos. I mean, that's when it is good to at least have some to stay. But then at the same time, you can completely ruin your trip by having no room for spontaneity.
Yeah.
For me, it was a balancing act.
I'm not sure if I've figured out the balancing out yet, because I still rock up to cities and like, well, there's no hostels for tonight. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing tonight. But then even Australia had that. And then I think like an hour or two towards the end of the day, somebody must have cancelled and the bed came free. I was like, well, I guess I'm sleeping somewhere tonight. Yeah, I guess it is a balancing act of allowing spontaneity. And I think one of the beautiful things about traveling is you meet random people and they're like, oh, by the way, I'm going here tomorrow. Do you want to join? You're like, yeah, that sounds incredible. Okay, fine, let's go. And then next thing you know, you're in Thailand one day, and suddenly without any plans, you're in Vietnam in the next 3 days, and you're like, wow, I was not expecting to be here. And then off you go. Whereas if it's so rigid that you're like, oh, sorry, I've got a flight booked in 2 days' time. I can't go. I've got three hostels booked for next week, so I can't go. That's one thing I've definitely don't think I've ever done, is book more than 1 week in advance a hostel or a flight, which normally means A, I spend more. B, I have to panic because I get there, I'm like, well, I guess that hostel, and that hostel are all fully booked. I guess I'm in the shack at the back of the city, which, again, you meet different types of people, different hostels, which is also part of the experience, right? Different experiences, different people, different thoughts. Yeah, I think you definitely need some flexibility.
I agree. It was on my sabbatical in 2022 that I worked that out as I cleared my calendar one for a couple of days and thought, I have no plans. I wonder what will happen. That evening, I chatted to someone called Dan. He was a doctor, Dr. Dan. And
Dr.
he
Dan.
said, what are you up to tomorrow? I said, I'm free. He said, well, do you want to come with me? Why, where are you off to, Dr. Dan? We were in Bosnia at the time. And he says, I've got a coach trip for a 1 day experience that's going to 3 different countries. I think they were Croatia,
In one
Kosovo,
day?
just in 1 day. It was a coach trip, and I think the countries were Croatia, Kosovo, and Montenegro. And you can get into and back out of all three within a day because
Okay.
they're all very closely linked. And don't quote me on that, but it was definitely 3 countries that we were in, and we did it all in a day. And I literally hadn't planned for it, had no idea what I was doing that day. And within an hour of sat talking to this Dr. Dan, who I'd only just met, I'd got a ticket booked, and then the following day we went and saw 3 countries. And to this day, that was one of my best ever spontaneous
Mhm.
days of activities that I've ever done. As I was swimming in a waterfall somewhere, cooling off after being on a boiling hot bus for a few hours, thinking, "Wow, what just happened?"
This is the cool thing. You just end up doing the most random things that you wouldn't even put on your list anyway. If you picked up the country, you're like, okay, I can do this, this, and this. Most of the things that are the most enjoyable are the things that you would never put on your list and are the most random excursions to here, like this, going to see 3 countries, waterfalls, and you just end up doing the most random stuff. That's why yeah, I love the spontaneity and having the freedom to do it. Also, you must have got back late. No, we either started at what, like 5 a.m. Got back at like
Yeah, it was a
midnight.
bit like a sunrise to sunset tour. And all I remember is at the end of the day, I was shattered, but we had an ice cream from an ice cream van, sat like watching the sunset over the sea in Bosnia or Croatia. I think maybe in Dubrovnik was where we'd started, and just
Game of Thrones.
thinking, wow, what a day. And then he was off that evening on a date with someone he'd met on an app, and I just couldn't wait to get my head down, get some sleep. So
Have
you'll
you
always meet people who've got more energy than you. That's what I found very quickly.
is he one of these that never spoke to again, or?
No, I think I connected with him and on Instagram, and I think we spoke for a few weeks, and then as it often happens with travel, you meet loads of new people, and it drops off, and you gradually go your separate ways because it's really difficult to keep in touch with everyone. But then, as I've found connecting with you, very, very quickly you can reignite the spark by reaching out and saying, "Hey, let's have a call," and within no time at all, it's as though you've never been apart.
I think that's one of the coolest things as well. I mean, it's sad because I always say the farewells are the saddest part of traveling, and even after 3.5 years, I still cry. I still cry now when I say goodbye to people. Um, but yeah, I think it's still beautiful when you do pick up the phone or you meet them again, and it's just as though you were away for like one day and then you're back, and then you're like us back in Georgetown in Malaysia, watching was it, James Bond we were talking about earlier, watching Pierce Brosnan, playing Twister, pub quiz, and going for coffee in the morning. Yeah, it's like it's weird. It's like you never parted. Which I guess is also one of the nice things about travel. You meet people in, I think, their most freeing state of being, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
does that sound right? I think that's one of the things I enjoy the most is I think when you meet a lot of people, they're in their work mode or they're so shattered from work or life. And then you meet people on the road and suddenly they're completely free. They get to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And they get to almost be whoever they want. And you get
Mm.
to witness it. Sometimes you get to witness it for 1 hour, sometimes for a couple of days. I've traveled with two people now for, I know, three people now for between 4 to 6 months. And this is another thing. You go solo traveling and you think, okay, I'm going to be alone. And you are rarely, rarely alone. Like travel solo, but you're always with people and you always meet other people. You meet like-minded and you go, okay, like we said earlier, you sounds cool. You're going off to Croatia, I'm coming with you, or you're going off to Vietnam, okay, I'm coming. And then you end up traveling for a month, 2 months. And yeah, I still enjoy it. I think it's still one of my favorite things about traveling.
I really like what you said there about meeting people, and I thought to myself, it's kind of like in their most authentic state. But then I thought it's when they're the most present, because when you meet friends at home, sometimes they're in the middle of a big project at work, which is occupying some of their mind. They're waiting for a call from the car insurance, so their phone's on the table while they're having a coffee with you. They've got they've got things that they're trying to remember they need to get done, need to take the washing out, need to do this, need to do that, must get the car back by 8 p.m. for my partner. They've got a million things going on in their head, and they can give you, say, 40% of their focus for the conversation, but 60% of them is off somewhere else. And I am so guilty of this myself. And it's really hard to be totally present with them. And that other person definitely picks up on that. Whereas when you are out traveling, you've left everything behind. I didn't own a house, didn't own a car. I got everything in my backpack, and it was all just on my bed or in a locker at the hostel. And I was there, and I wasn't anywhere else. I was just simply there. And in our case, just sat having a coffee with you, completely focused and fixated on what we were talking about. And it was as though all of life, 100% of my experience of life was there with us in that coffee shop. And there was nothing else going on outside because I was just fully present. I don't know what your thoughts about that are.
No, I agree with that. I think it's also different with societal pressure because when you're traveling, I think you meet so many people that are their authentic self, and that it means there's full of wonderful, weird, different people, and you're like, okay, I can be whoever I want to, or I can be myself. I can be maybe there's some odd things that I like to do, and I find out that I'm kind of weird at times as well. But when you're in a job and you're back home and everybody's expected to do the not the same thing, but you have your routines, yours to go to work, you do this. I think there's a lot of societal pressure to, I don't like the word normal, but to be a certain way. So I think when you are traveling and you don't have that pressure, it's a huge relief, I think, and it does allow you to be more present, to be in the moment, to enjoy the person who's in front of you, to enjoy the surroundings, and I find it gives me a lot more opportunity to see the smaller things. Because I think when you're back home and busy, you only have time to see the big picture, I guess. Whereas traveling and you have this freedom, you have this, I was gonna say empty mind, but that's not the word I'm after. But like more freeing mind. Yeah, you can notice a lot more smaller, beautiful things, and you get to have the more deeper conversations and more, not necessarily more authentic, but
Richer.
richer. Yeah, I like that word. Richer conversations. And I think having that setting allows you to be more open to ideas in different ways and different thoughts from people in different cultures. Yeah, I think it's definitely more, freeing and allows you to
Mm.
have these more opportunities to
It
go
feels
in
like,
there, go in the middle of nowhere and have a coffee every morning.
yes.
And it was street food, Indian street food, I think
Yeah, that
Georgetown
was
was
it.
famous for.
What are they like samosas? Yeah.
Mimosas and the peanut curry sauce, which I still dream about to this day. Just on a tiny little street vendor, peanut sauce. So would happily eat that any day.
I think
Um,
I love what you said there. I just wanted to pick up again on like the identity piece in that when you meet people for the first time, like in a hostel, you can be whoever you want to be at that moment. I used to introduce myself in different ways. Sometimes I'd be David, the former IT guy, or David, the coach, or
yeah.
David, the full-time solo traveler. You can decide who you're going to be, and
I thought you
people,
were going to say, or Peter the coachman, or John the
yeah,
policeman, or
yeah.
it's
You
a whole
could,
new identity.
Alan the decorator, but you can be whoever you want to be. And the point is, when you're around friends and family, people that have known you for a long time back home, everyone knows you as who they've known you for the last 10 plus years, or the last year at least. And it can be really hard to change your identity. It can be really hard to shift. I was talking to someone earlier for another episode of the podcast who is a former doctor turned mortgage advisor. And he said the hardest thing was that years after, people still thought of me as Matt the doctor. No, not doctor, mortgage advisor. And they had to catch themselves, but his identity was still Matt the doctor. Whereas in reality, he'd not been Matt the doctor for a very long time. And he was in the process of letting go of that identity, but it was super hard to let go of it when everyone else still sees you as being that person. But when you travel, you can decide, I'm not going to be Matt the doctor today. And that's it. That Matt the doctor's gone. And it's not about faking it and being someone who you're not. I just found it was a lot easier to be who I wanted to be versus be who other people have known me as for many, many years, if that makes sense.
So to be more what you're feeling in that day, right? So you might wake up, you might be a bit in a quieter mode or not so talkative, and that's fine. You might just be the quiet David sat in a corner who maybe says hello to a couple of people and just goes for a solo hike or something like this. Or you might wake up and you know what, I'm feeling really talkative, really charismatic today. I'm gonna see how many people I can talk to and meet and get along with. And yeah, I think it gives, yeah, it's not like you're having a completely fake, it's not like having a fake identity. It's just allowing different parts of you to come forward at different times. So like you say, you don't have to be, okay, this person knows me as this talkative, charismatic, loud person. That's who I've got to be. Okay, I don't feel like that, but okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's actually, you know what, I'm going to enjoy reading my book today, or I was going to be quiet and non-talkative, which I have those days some days, but most people know me as quite talkative. So I think being at home, it would be a lot harder to be quiet because people are like, is something wrong? Are you okay? What's going on? I'm like, no, I'm just quiet today. Whereas,
Mm,
like you say, while you're traveling, it's almost like a clean slate, right? These people know nothing about you. And this is another interesting thing. I think I told you before. I've sometimes you meet somebody and you have the most in-depth conversation. I told you I met this person. We said hello, didn't even know each other's names, and we sat there for 1 hour talking about therapy, all our traumas, all everything that we've done in therapy. And I think we ended the conversation by going, "Oh, my name's Jamie, by the way. Hi, I'm Matt." Um, and then never saw them again. But for 1 hour, I had like a beautiful, beautiful conversation. They were like, I've never told people these things before. And you sit there and you open up yourself. And I think that's another thing. It allows people to be super open and more confident with what they say and allows more of their maybe personality side or personality traits that don't normally get to shine.
mm,
And you're with somebody who A is not going to not judge, but yeah, like you say, people who already know you expect you to be a certain way. I mean, this person has no expectations of you. So you can
mm,
be whatever version of you or whatever part of you you want to be at that point. I
mm.
enjoy that. Like now, that conversation was 2.5 years ago, and I don't remember the guy's name, might be mad, I don't know, but I still remember the conversation, and I still think like, wow, like just 1 hour, random hour, and then yeah, sad that we never saw each other again. But those are the ways of the traveling life. Oh,
I like it. I think if someone's listening and they're saying, okay, I get it, but how does this relate to me? For me, the bottom line is this. If you are finding in life that you're wrestling with the big question of who am I, and you're wrestling and you're finding, you know, you're wrestling with what your identity is and struggling with identity. I personally was. Going traveling can be a really good way of working through that and leaning into that question, trying out different identities, and also just spending time meeting lots of people and doing lots of things, realizing how much you're capable of, gaining more self belief and self confidence, and maybe in the process, if you're lucky, figuring out who you really are at your core versus who you've perhaps grown up thinking you were, or in my case, who you've grown up trying to be.
yes, very big things. I think most. I mean, it's 3.5 years, and it probably took me 2.5 to 3 to even start to realize the answers to those questions. I mean, maybe I was enjoying myself too much to focus on those questions. Now I've lost my train of thought. um, yeah, I completely lost my train of thought now.
There was a great, I think I heard it on a podcast or read it in a book. There's a philosopher saying that I am not who I am. I am who I think that you think I am. So I am not who I am. I am who I think who you think I am.
That's a tongue twister, isn't it?
It really is. It really is, and it's that confusion of identity. But at the risk of this becoming an extremely overly philosophical conversation, I wanted to come back to the point where we were talking about like some of the challenges of solo travel are making lots of friends and then like losing lots of friends in the pro at the same time. What I mean by that is you meet someone, you travel for a couple of weeks, you build a great relationship, and then your schedules no longer align and one person goes off to their next country or their next hostel and you happen to be going in a different direction, and there is when you say goodbye. And for me, that heartbreak that I experienced meeting and making friends with people like yourself and then saying goodbye, for me that led me to, I think they call it travel burnout or travel fatigue, and I had to spend 6 weeks in Langkawi on the coast of Malaysia recharging my batteries from having made so many friends and said so many heartfelt goodbyes. And I'm curious as to what are some of the challenges that you've experienced on your 3.5 years of traveling.
I mean, definitely the burnout. It's a real thing. Even now, I mean, I'm in Bulgaria for a month just to sit in the mountains and to be by myself because it does get exhausting constantly saying, introducing yourself to new people, getting to know them and explore what this person has to offer and who they are. And then to be like, yes, great, I get along with them so well. We connect, we have good conversations, we go exploring, and then it's okay, goodbye. And then it's okay, on to the next person. Hello, I'm Jamie. And it really does get exhausting. And it does lead to huge burnout, huge. And I think this is one thing that gets overlooked with long-term traveling. It is great and it is amazing and it's absolutely life-changing. I would recommend anybody to do traveling, even if it's just for 3 months, 6 months. I mean, the longer you go, the more time you have to explore the question of who am I? And you get to, but even with that, even with the question of who am I or who am I in my core, that's you don't just go traveling and suddenly it slaps you along the face and it's like, hey, here you are. You actually have to work for it and to go and search and to be open to exploring new parts of yourself, to exploring different ways of thinking, and to be fully open. and to, I mean, a lot of people do it and they go spend 6 months and every day they are out partying and drinking and I've done my partying for 2 to 3 weeks nonstop, and it is incredible. But at some point, it does get tiring, and it does lead to where you're exhausted. And normally, I would do 1 2 weeks of partying and lots of socializing, and then I would do 1 to 2 weeks of rest. I mean, even my resting is still hiking up a mountain or going scuba diving or doing something that is not really that restful, but it's more mentally restful that I get to be with myself and to have my own thoughts and not have to put a lot of energy and effort into meeting these new people and a lot of energy and effort into saying goodbye to them. Like you said, it really does drain. It's beautiful, but it's really, really draining. Um, so yeah, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
What I will say, thanks, Jimmy. What I will say is that I love what you said about rest there. I think, my own partner, for example, works as a doctor. She gets incredibly exhausted by that. It's a really hard job, works super long hours, and she rests by climbing mountains. She emotionally she rests by climbing mountains because it brings her a great sense of peace and wholeness. And the point is there's different types of rest. There's physical and then there's mental rest as
Yeah.
well. And sometimes it takes doing something really physically challenging and difficult to mentally rest and recover and recuperate. And I think that the overarching point is another great reason to go solo traveling is to work out how you physically rest and recharge, because you might be someone who, like me, had several burnouts in a row, ended up being so burnt out at times that it took me 3 attempts to load some dishes into the dishwasher. I mean, completely shot, useless to everyone. And I couldn't figure out why on earth it was happening. But then I realized I never really rested. I never really shut off. My work-life boundaries were crap, and I'd just think about work all the time. I'd worry about it. I'd obsess over it. And then I thought I was resting by sitting and watching Star Trek on the sofa, whereas in reality, I needed to get on my bike or get my walking boots on and go out there in nature to physically take my mind off of work and get my head out of work into something else. And that realization, I just didn't come up with it until I was traveling and had that moment of, now I realize what's been happening and what I've actually needed, you know?
I think one of the big things that does get left out is the mental rest. Like we all think of physically being exhausted, and you're okay, I'm physically exhausted. I need to go and lie down. I need to have a day's rest or something like this. But traveling really teaches you your mental rest is equally, if not more important than physical rest for me. Like if I'm not mentally rested, then I'm literally just going to couch potato for the day because I'm not going to have any capacity to do anything. And it really, really teaches you, makes you really focus on the mental aspect of it. Oh, my voice went there. Mental aspects of rest, and because everything is draining. Like you say, working is constantly draining your mental state, your interactions with your friends, with your families, constantly thinking and thinking. And even that does lead to burnout and exhaustion. And I think one of the cool things about traveling is you can, A, recognize that, and B, you can actually go and do something about it. You can actually go and discover how, like you said, how you recuperate your mental, can't think of the word, mental
Energy
energy.
reserved. Yeah.
Yeah, if that is, like you say, if that's going to cycling through a new city or hiking up a mountain or going to spend a day at the beach or, all any of these options, I think, yeah, I definitely think it's something that's overlooked a lot. And I think a really, really good opportunity, whilst I was going to say solo traveling, but just traveling in general, I think gives you the freedom and the opportunity to learn, understand, and actually put into practice.
Mm.
It takes a little while you have to almost become exhausted by it before you actually learn about it. I guess like
Yeah.
you loading the dishwasher 3 times before you're actually like, okay, something is something slightly off here. And you get that space and you get that time, and you meet other people. You meet lots of other people. And when you talk about having these deeper conversations, you meet these people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's burnout. Well, yeah, I've been there, done that. You need to do this." And you have an in-depth conversation. You learn. You can learn about anything, and if you listen and you talk to as many different people as you possibly can, you just learn so much. I say random brilliance. I don't know. Some of it's just random weird nonsense that you're like, okay, well, that's never going to come useful. And other times you're like, wow, what? How have I spent 30 years not thinking about this or not known about this? You know, like it's just taken this person from the other side of the world who looks at things differently and has given you a prod with a good conversation. Like, okay, I understand. And yeah, uh,
Mm. I like it. I think there's well, firstly, I think we have oversimplified definitions of ourselves. You know, am I an extrovert or am I an introvert? I think in reality, you know, with the traditional description of extroverts are recharged by people, introverts are discharged by people, you know, drained by people.
mhm.
I think it's more complicated than that. I think there's certain people that drain us all, regardless of whether we're an extrovert or an
Yeah.
introvert. Some of them are on telly quite often, and we think, oh God, every time we see them. And then other
Mhm.
people recharge us all, depending on when we spend time with them, the way they spend time with them, because it gets us out of our head and it changes our whole state of being. So I think it's more complex. And the key thing, like you said, is just know thyself better. So self awareness is key for me.
I think that is a big lesson in finding the coming back to the question of who am I? It's discovering those boundaries and who does recharge you, who you do actually feel excited to be around, who energizes you. And quickly have to learn and discover, okay, this type of person is going to drain me. I'm going to have to set my boundaries, no, or I can be with this person for maybe 10 minutes, or if we're at a walk, but at other parts, it's going to be a no. And this was a big thing that I had to learn was A, to have boundaries, and B, figure out what my boundaries were, and then C, to start to implement them so that I can enjoy being who I am and being around the right, I don't know if the right kind of people or the right kind of people for me who are going, because I always thought I was an extrovert. Before travel, I would have told you, yeah, I'm 100% extrovert. And actually, I'm probably now lingering around the 55% introvert, 45% extrovert, and trying to find a balance where both of those sides can get to flourish. It's definitely a challenge, but I enjoy it. You know, some days you're super introverted and okay, it's going to be an introverted day today. Maybe this person or this person is going to really energize that introverted side and help me to feel relaxed and enjoy that day. And other times it's like, okay, I'm actually feeling extroverted today. I have this friend. We're going to go and go explore a lost city or something like this. And it's finding out the right people for the right time. And sometimes I think we have expectations of people to fulfill all our needs. And I think that's unfair on them, and I think it's unfair on ourselves. And it's finding who can fulfill certain needs of yours, and how you can fulfill certain needs of other people, and having realistic expectations. And also, when you have realistic expectations, you're not as disappointed as much, which was a lesson I learned, setting really, really unrealistic expectations and then getting hurt and upset every time they weren't met,
Mm.
and then trying to change that. And it does sometimes, it means you have to have really low expectations of certain people. And then they get to meet the expectations, and you're like, yes, great, fine. It is far nicer than being disappointed with unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. I
And
agree. I had a conversation with someone called Ed yesterday who's going to be on the podcast soon. And a bit like me, he's come back from a long period of solo travel. And what we both found at first was we had huge expectations of coming home and what it'd be like, particularly that, certain friends and family might want to come and sit around a campfire and hear about all of our travel stories from dusk till dawn.
Mhm.
Whereas in reality, people's lives have just been going on as normal while you've been away. No time at all has really passed for them. Nothing much has changed for them. And they still have the same moans, frustrations, and, life is very much the same for them. And they don't realize that you've changed at all. They might even consider that you've just been on a holiday for a year or two. And they don't have any reference point because it's not something that they have done before. And I'm not
Mhm.
slagging off people who don't travel. On the contrary, I'm saying the key thing is to realize when you come home, I've done something that a lot of people, or maybe everyone in my inner circle, has never done before and will never do. So it's wrong for me. It's maybe not the best thing for me to expect them to know what it's like and to know how I'm feeling. So to not have that expectation, but also to have that acknowledgement that they have missed me. They are very fond of me. They do want to know how I am, and they are interested in where I've been and what I've been up to. But I think let's get real with the expectation of maybe they might ask one or two or three questions, and then they might get on to telling you about how Sandra next door is still not putting a bin out, or
Mhm.
how Alan next door still has a noisy motorbike, and all of the normal elements of life might come out. And when I realized that, and when I came back from traveling the second time, my reintegration into normal life was a lot easier because I didn't expect so much of other people. So I wasn't let down as far. And then when people did, like some of my friends did take the time to ask me, Dave, come round, tell me everything. Like, we've missed you so much. I was then delighted because it
Mhm.
exceeded my expectations.
Uh-huh.
So it
Uh-huh.
was like a win-win.
Uh-huh. Certainly, I don't even like the word low expectations, but more realistic expectations. But again, that's something that you didn't know when you first returned to England, right? But then you implemented it the second. And did you feel a big difference when you did come back that second time? Did you feel more energized and less let down, I guess?
Yes,
Anything?
the first time I came home, it was after a sabbatical. It was kind of the end, and I had a wedding to get back to, and then I had work to get back to. And I felt like just as I'd got going with my travel, it was all suddenly being almost like the carpet was being pulled from beneath my feet, and I was suddenly having to stop just as it was getting good. And I really found that very jarring and difficult to come home and to sort of slip into my old life. I couldn't really do it because I'd changed, I'd grown, I'd evolved and grown outside of the box which I previously fit into. So
Mhm.
now I was all folded into this box, thinking, Jesus, this isn't for me anymore. But the second time I came home, because I'd traveled for so long, I'd come to terms with coming home. My best friend very kindly came to Thailand and came home with me, which made that a lot easier. And I knew more what to expect, and I knew that I was going to have a crash and that it was going to be difficult to reintegrate back into life. But the knowledge that that was going to happen meant that it was a lot less of a crash than before. Yeah, because you can brace for impact in a way.
I guess you've also, yeah, had some experience in it, right? So you kind
Yeah.
of know what is going to happen to a certain degree. And how did you find? I mean, I haven't had it yet because I haven't. I mean, I've returned to England for I think 4 weeks is my longest stint back in the UK. And even then, when I think I was in Brighton and I looked around and you see everybody marching to work and doing their same routines, and I was like, no, I like, get me out, get me out. So how you found coming back and I'm gonna say not being a rectangle anymore, being like maybe a hexagon trying to fit into a cube. Like, how have you found A? Do you think it's easy to go back into to fall back into that mold, back into that square, or is it a constant battle? How have you found that? I guess because A,
I
I'm
think
nowhere near ready to try and get back into a mold yet, but I'm intrigued. It's how you yeah manage with everybody else. not everybody, but a lot of people fitting into that mold. And you do experience and you do change and you do grow so much while traveling. How do you how do you deal with that?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking, Jamie. And I think there's a whole podcast on it. But given our time constraints,
Episode two.
given our time constraints, I think I'll try and answer your question in a nutshell. I think that the headline figures of this, like you said, how do you fall back into normal life again? I think the key thing is to fall forward, in that, to realize, okay, I've got all these experiences and all this growth, and no one can take that away from me. So I'm going to do something with it. And what I've done coming home is structure a life that's got a lot of variation, because I really value security and stability, and I value freedom and adventure. And the key thing now is to create a life that's got the security and the stability of the base where I am now at home, and the consistency of friends and family nearby. And at the same time, there's a lot of freedom and adventure within it, because I'm building my own business. I'm going to business networking events full of strangers and introducing myself. I'm building relationships. I'm out there walking up and down the road giving my flyer out, which is going to go in some shop windows. I'm liaising with new people that, to see if they want to become clients, and I'm learning about how to sell myself, how to market my business, how to finance my business, how to do business accounts, all of these things that are completely alien to me.
New challenges.
Every day is a learning curve and a school day. And as a result, at the end of the week, I'm exhausted and I'm tired, but I've learned and grown lots. And I'm on the steepest part of that learning curve at the moment. And it's freaking fantastic. And it's all steeped within this, it's contained within the stability of, my normal life that's got a routine to it. And it's got kind of reasonably fixed working hours and a kind of reasonable work life harmony. So I've kind of got the best of both worlds, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I guess it's taking what you learn from traveling and taking what you need from back home and combining them into to work together, I guess, right? Like you say, into work life harmony rather than, but is that better than balance? I don't know. Harmony sounds nicer. Um, yeah, okay. Like, I mean, I'm still gonna keep traveling on my running away from home bit at the moment, but yeah, I enjoy the answer to that.
And I will advocate, I will disclaim that, if you have your doubts about that and the fact that it sounds easier said than done, absolutely 100% it is. Do I still have days where I really miss being on the road and the freedom of being in hostels? Absolutely. Do I have days where I miss having a full-time job with a solid, sustainable income that rolls into the account on the 30th of the month every month? Definitely. There's elements of my previous lives as a full-time IT person and as a full-time solo traveler that I really miss on a semi-regular basis. And then I come back to realizing why neither of those shoes fit anymore. Because in the full-time job, I didn't have the adventure and the freedom. And in the solo travel, I didn't have the consistency, stability, security, and a clear idea about my future life. And I didn't know what my purpose was. And I felt a little bit purposeless at a couple of points. So I knew that I needed a bit of both. But as I said earlier, the answer to I'm not happy over here is seldom the complete polar opposite. In reality, it's in that mushy grey area in the middle.
The mushy grayness.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
There's quite a
it's
lot.
yeah.
Because I think there's quite a lot of things that live in the mushy grayness in the middle. And I think you often have to go to both extremes in order to before you find out your nice fit in the mushy grayness.
And I'm
Um,
from the East Midlands. I grew up and born in the East Midlands, which is the mushy greyness in the middle of the UK. If we're talking about the weather, in terms of the weather, it's
I'm on like
mushy and
five
grey.
degrees. I'm on 5 degrees right now. You can't complain too much about the weather. And I will
But
say, British
yeah,
people talking about the weather is 100% correct. No matter where we are in the world, you speak to a British person, and you will guarantee still have a conversation about how the weather is.
and it
Uh,
might involve the last time they had a good cup of tea as well, and how long
yeah,
it's been, and how inadequate that is.
the amount of British that I see traveling, and they just pull out their packet of tea, their tea bag ready to go, and you see other people like, you travel with tea. I mean, I don't. I'm not quite reached. Maybe I'm not British enough. Maybe I've lost my my Britishness. But like, you see the other people like they travel with tea bags, and they're like, yeah, they're British. They're British. There's definitely some stereotypes that we, no matter where we are in the world, we live up to them.
Cheers. I'll drink to that.
I mean,
Right.
I don't know about tea.
So, as we start to round off this fabulous conversation, my last question to you is my second to last question is if there's someone listening who really wants to go solo traveling, but is scared and has all of the fears and anxieties that you and me know well, because we had them before we went on the journey. What do you know now that you wish you would have known then? So, what advice would you give to the younger Jamie and David right at the beginning of that journey?
Right at the beginning. Hold on to your socks and get ready for a roller coaster of a ride. That'd probably be my first thing. And say that no matter what you expect, it's going to be above and beyond that. And I think you have to be ready to fully immerse yourself in a completely out of the box experience and be ready to meet people that you never dreamed of existed, have conversations and do activities that you never thought possible, and to be ready to explore yourself and explore what the world has to offer, and that it is the single greatest decision I've ever made in my life was to pack up, get on a flight to Ecuador, and not look back. And I cannot imagine life before. I mean, you asked me, did it feel like a lifetime ago? It felt like it feels like a lifetime ago, and I think anybody who's doubting themselves or questioning it, don't. I mean, do question things, but just do it. You don't live life with regrets. I would say you will not regret it. I've never met a single person who's regretted traveling, put it that way. And I've met quite a few people, and not a single one has regretted it.
There you have it, folks. There you have it. There's nothing I'd add. There's nothing I'd change. You said it perfectly there. And if someone's watching or listening and wants to follow your journey and see where you've been and where you're going next, how can they follow you? Hint, hint, what's your Instagram handle?
Instagram handle is Jaimito_UK. I guess you can link it after. I was in Latin America, and I thought, okay, let's be spicy. Let's do a Spanish version of Jamie. And 3.5 years later, it's still there, Jaimito. So yeah, and
we'll pop a link down in the show notes so people can follow you, and which I'm sure they'll want to. I know I love seeing where you are, what you're up to. It's always great. You take some lovely pictures as well, so it's great inspo for where to go next.
I'll be the little travel scout.
And as many people said to me when I went traveling, I can't come with you. I wish I could come with you. So I'm going to travel vicariously through you. So I had a lot of people, looking at pictures and videos that I was sharing, that were sharing in the fun and the enjoyment from back home, which I know I do by following your Instagram.
Thank you,
thank you for that.
I try and keep it updated every 4 months or so.
Well, here's your prompt to keep it more updated.
Yes, sir.
But thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. The time has absolutely flown by, and I think there's been some real nuggets and gems of wisdom and advice in there. And I'm sure that everyone listening, whether they're interested in travel or not, has got something from it.
Hopefully. And where's your next long-term travel destination, David?
TBC. We've got a couple of little trips booked in this year, but yeah, if I can get to the point where my business is able to run a little bit, say a bit of a passive income there, and perhaps some of my clients are able to pivot to every now and again having a Zoom session rather than face to face, there might be a way that I could go on an extended trip that's a bit more than a holiday. But we shall see. Watch this space. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing at the minute. So I'm not yearning for another overseas adventure just yet. But
Just yet, just yet.
but never
Give
say
it
never.
a year. Give it a year. Give it a year.
Never say never.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you for having me, David.
The Solo Coach Podcast.